Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today we have the start of another new series, and this time the series is going to be called This Year in Perfume. Now, obviously my channel's new, it's only been around about a month, so there are some new stuff that I've been doing lately. Yesterday I did my first Perfumer's Portfolio video where I highlighted the work of Anique Minardo. So this is going to highlight specific years in perfumery. Normally, the name is going to make more sense than today because this year in perfume is normally only going to be 1 year, 1988, 1980, whatever it may be. And there are some years where I've got, 10, 12 different bottles I can show you. But in this batch of time that I wanted to start with, I only have a couple bottles from each time frame. So this is going to be a conglomeration of 1974 to 1977. So we're going to aggregate all the fragrances that I have in my collection together from those years, and I'm going to show them to you. Now, a note that I'm sure will come up, I am going off of Parfumo.net. I'm not going off of Fragrantica or Base Notes. There are some fragrances where Base Notes says one thing that the year it was released, and Fragrantica says another, and Parfumo says a different year. So I'm just going off of the Parfumo year that it was released, and if there's a aftershave and EDT that were released in different years, I'm always going off of the fragrance, the EDT. So before we get started, let me start with a very special fragrance as my scent of the day. I always like to share my scent of the day with you guys. Today it is Costume National Homme Parfum, and the guy who gave me this decant here misspelled costume, sorry about that, but it's C-O-S-T-U-M-E. And this is the Parfum version, not the just regular original Costume National Homme from early 2000s. And this is created by master perfumer Dominique Ropion. And Rich Mitch said that this smells like a Tom Ford fragrance to him, and I totally understand what he means. Now, he's talking about the EDT, but the Parfum and the EDT are very similar in smell. The Parfum came out in 2020, and I think the EDT came out 20 years prior. Both released by Dominique Ropion. I like when a brand lets the original perfumer actually do the reformulation or do the flanker. That's big to me. And if you like spicy fragrances, there's a beautiful cardamom note in this. There's a lovely cinnamon, big patchouli, beautiful sandalwood and labdanum and musk in the base. If you like spicy fragrances, not soft spicy, like let's say Opium pour homme, but warm spicy, something that, this is a big, powerful projector to me. This is a very strong fragrance, at least the Parfum is. And you can see I'm in my sweater. For those of you that know I live in Texas, it is January 15th today, and it's finally below freezing. It's 32 degrees right now, so I'm rocking the sweater, which I don't get to do very often, so I wanted to wear something powerful, and Costume National Homme is a fragrance that if you like modern fragrances, this is a very interesting release. Very unique, too. Really enjoy it. It's not old school like a lot of the fragrances that I love, but I still enjoy this, so that speaks volume. So, again, we're going to start with the year 1974 in perfumery, and this is actually, we're going to start with one of my favorite fragrances of all time, and it's going to be the thumbnail fragrance for this video. It is Givenchy Gentleman. One of my favorite fragrances of all time. It would fight for the top spot for me. It's this heavy patchouli and animalic honey. There's this civet note in the base that makes it very animalic. It's manly. So this, I highlighted this in my patchouli video. I would highlight this in like a top honey video that I plan on doing. I would highlight this in one of my animalic videos. So as you can see with these fragrances, it's not just one thing. You're not just going to say, oh, this is a patchouli. Oh, this is animalic. Sometimes fragrances can be different things in different portions of the fragrance and different notes that you want to highlight. This highlights those main three. So it was in my patchouli video fragrance that I made as one of my favorite fragrances, my favorite patchouli. It would be in one of my favorite honey. This has a beautiful animalic honey note, just absolutely gorgeous. And then that civet that adds a little bit of skank to it. This is from 1974 and it's made for men, so it has all those kind of facets to it. It also has this orris, and you don't really smell the orris as much as you sense it. You sense the powderiness that the orris gives. There's a beautiful cinnamon note in here, tarragon. There's citruses in the top, but you don't really get them very much. At least in the vintage you don't, because, you know, the citrus tries to come up to play and the other notes just drag them right down, because this is a heavy wear. You know, this is when you want to be noticed. Some people will say it's old school. I don't care. I love smelling like this. I love going against the stream. You know, if all the fish are swimming this way, I like to be the one that goes against the stream. This will definitely allow you to do that. And I have a backup bottle. Anytime you see me with a backup bottle, you know that's a fragrance that is in my top pick. So, Givenchy Gentlemen, one thing I will say, this is the 1974 version. They've taken this Givenchy Gentleman line and they have, you know, done flanker after flanker after flanker now. I've never smelled any of the new stuff. If you can get one that has this silver sticker around it, as you can see, this is a splash, this is a spray. They both have that silver sticker. That's what you want. Other than that, I can't speak to any of the other versions. I think they're completely different fragrances. So if you can find one with the silver sticker from 1974, do it. Next fragrance from 1974, and the last fragrance from 1974 on the list actually, is a cheapie. I think I paid $6 for this, or maybe something close to that. Definitely less than 10. This is a fragrance from Coty called Cote Musk for men. Look at that color combination. Tell me that's not 1970s. And as the name says, this is a musk fragrance, and a heavy musk fragrance. They make a new version, I think, that has a silver cap. So this is an older bottle. I don't think it's so old that it's, you know, from the 70s or 80s or anything. I think it's probably 20 years old, give or take. The ingredients are actually inside the label there. So you can see it says copyright Coty down below with the ingredients, and it does have a pretty long list of ingredients, if I do say so myself. So this is not going to be, you know, more than 20 years old. If you're a musk fan, you know, just because this is cheap, don't discount this. This is a very interesting fragrance to just wear. You know, if you want something around the house, you don't want to wear something expensive. This is musk amber with some woody notes and citruses. Simple fragrance. But this is the kind of stuff that, you know, men wore in the past. Look at the bottle, too. I mean, it's almost like a man in 1974 doesn't want to wear something in a perfume bottle, so they give it to him in a bottle like this. Almost looks like a little spray you can throw in your bag and go. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that, that sold back then. So, Cote Musk from 1974. Now we're going to move to 1975, and we're going to start with the Creed. And, you know, Creed, they've got a lot of bad press lately. There was a book put out by Gabe Oppenheim called The Ghost Perfumer, which highlights some of Creed's misdeeds or straight up lies, you could say, about some of their history. I started out as a Creed fan when I started my journey, when I started buying perfumes, you know, with 10 years ago or whatever it was, heavy, when I really started to get into it heavy. I'm not talking about when I was a kid, you know, wearing Nautica and going to elementary school or anything. I'm talking about when I really got into the art of perfume. I was suckered in by the high price tag, and I thought, oh, if it's not a Creed, if it's not an Amouage, if you're not paying $300 a bottle, it sucks. And that's not true at all. So the marketing worked on me, but now my eyes are open and I'm finding all these other fragrances. I never would have bought something like this 10 years ago. You know, I never would have experienced something like this because I would have just wrote it off as cheap because it's dollar price cheap. So don't let dollar price expensive or dollar price cheap allow your, you know, preconceptions of a fragrance to change, because there are expensive fragrances that suck, and there are cheap fragrances that you just ask yourself, how can you get such an amazing perfume for 10, 12, 20 bucks? You know, it just doesn't make sense. But you can. They are out there, but you have to know how to navigate the waters. So this is a fragrance that's now discontinued. All these gray cap creeds are discontinued because the gray caps symbolize that it was an EDT. By the way, for a fragrance that's sold for $300 or whatever it was, the cap on this is just the most flimsy thing you could ever imagine. It's about as light as a feather. You know, this gold looks like the cheapest thing you could think of. The atomizer was cool. This is back when it used to have what they called the fire hose atomizer, because it would just dump liquid on you whenever you spray. One of the best atomizers in the game. These old creeds that actually had creed marked on the top like that, these were the best atomizers. They changed them, obviously. Still great atomizers, but these old fire hose ones were, woo, brutal. You could just see the juice line go when you would spray. But this is Zesty Mandarin Pamplemousse, and this is from 1975. This is, you know, they were being honest in the 70s because they had to. I think this is basically when the fragrance brand really got started in the 1970s. If you pull up old creeds, you'll see stuff from the 50s. You'll see stuff from, you know, 1899. This was for the King of Austria, the Queen of Spain, blah, blah, blah. That's all basically been proven to be a marketing tactic. It was proven not to be true. There are no creed fragrances that are around. I think before the late 60s. I think the late 60s are when the first creed fragrances really started to come about. And this is one such fragrance that kind of really launched the brand. I would be very interested to know who the perfumer was. You know, if you look in Fragrantica, it says Olivier Creed, and we know Olivier Creed is not a perfumer according to that book. Don't sue me, Creed. I'm just saying what the book said. And so basically, Zesty Mandarin Pamplemousse is a very simple composition, but for the heat, it's a beautiful composition because it uses grapefruit, hence the Pamplemousse, and it uses bergamot and orange in the top. And then it says white flowers in Fragrantica, but to my nose, it's a very clear honeysuckle note. You get this honeysuckle accord in the mid, and then the most beautiful ambergris you can imagine in the base. And that's the thing about Creed, is the old Creeds like this that are now discontinued, they used to use quality ingredients. In fact, Pierre Bourdon gave an interview where, you know, he said that other perfumers would laugh at him when he would basically talk about the budget, because he made Green Irish Tweed, and he also made Cool Water, which was a take on Green Irish Tweed later on. But he said other perfumers would laugh at Olivier Creed because he gave him such a big budget to create these. He basically had an unlimited budget. So for a perfumer, it was kind of a dream, because if you wanted to put, you know, 20-30% ambergris to create a fragrance like this, you could. You can't do that anymore. Well, you could, but the cost of ambergris has skyrocketed since the 1970s. So it would be very tough, very cost ineffective for a brand to put 30% ambergris in something like this. And there's also now limitations to, you know, coming up with ambergris, but don't go out and spend huge money on this, because it's basically a beautiful citrus fragrance, which I think would smell amazing on a woman. But I wear this in the heat. As you can see, this is my dent that I have put in the bottle. Now, I do drench myself in this stuff when it's hot and I wear it. And you can see they used to stamp their name on the name of the fragrance on the bottom. Very high-class Creed. This is a 75 ml bottle, which is also discontinued. They don't make 75 ml bottles anymore. They now make 50 and 100 ml bottles. So a good rule of thumb with Creed is when you buy Creed fragrances, if you can find the older 75 ml, or if you can find the older 125 ml, the 4.2 ounce bottles, buy those instead of the 50 and the 100 mls, because the older you go back in time with Creed, the better the formula will be, the better the quality of the ingredients. You know, Creed has become more and more, the quality has gone like this as the years have gone on, in my opinion, and that's because of Aventus. Aventus took off. It was such a hit that, you know, they basically said, why are we spending money on a fragrance like this? Why are we creating a fragrance like this that costs us a lot of money and the margins are smaller when we can just pump out Aventus after Aventus after Aventus? The margins are huge. You know, we can reformulate, we can save costs, people still buy it just based on the name. So the old gray cap EDTs, where I'm going with this, is that the old gray cap EDTs are some of the best quality creeds you can find. There's Royal English Leather, which I have. That's a beautiful leather fragrance. There's Royal Scottish Lavender, which is one of the most amazing lavender scents I've ever smelled. So don't, you know, discount these because they're an EDT. Don't just think, oh, you know, new creeds are all EDPs, the EDTs suck. No, it's kind of the other way around. The new formulations that they've done, the reformulations to save money, have really hurt the brand. And the older stuff like this is an amazing citrus. I'm going to do a top citrus list soon, and this will definitely be on my top citrus list. So very hard to find, but the price is not really skyrocketed on these because no one's talking about, you know, no one's running out to buy Zesty Mandarin Pamplemousse, I can tell you that. So 1975, this came out, one of the fragrances that kind of launched the House of Creed. And then one of my favorite fragrances from 1975, and this is a cheapie. This would definitely make my cheapie list for sure whenever I put a cheapie list out. This is Denim's, or Original Denim. And look at the button on the front. It's like a jeans button for denim. And I got this bottle for $19.99, shipping included from Europe. And this is obviously a modern formulation. It's not a vintage. At least I don't think it is. And it's hard to come by in the States, believe it or not. But this is also a very simple composition. 1975, masculine fragrances were supposed to be a certain way. You know, they were supposed to smell masculine. You didn't want to smell like a girl in 1975. You didn't want floral notes. You know, you wanted something like this, which I love wearing this, by the way. This is Clary Sage, Bergamot, Petit Grain in the top, Olibanum in the mid, and that Olibanum in this is amazing for a $20 fragrance. Outstanding. And then there's Cedar, Vetiver, Amber in the base. So, if you like old school fragrances, if you're a fan of vintage masculines, this is a must-have. I mean, the cap is, you can't even pick it up by the cap because it comes apart, but the atomizer looks about as cheap can be. Look at that atomizer. And the cap is, you know, basically nothing. It weighs about as much as that Creed cap, but so what? The quality of the juice that you get for $20, you know, definitely on my best cheapie list. When I create one, this will be there. Such a great composition. It's compared to fragrances like the one that's coming up next, actually. And it's compared to fragrances like Aramis and stuff like that. Bijan Man. If you like those kind of fragrances and you've never smelled this, put this on your to sniff list. Okay, next, one of the fragrances it's compared to, and I enjoy wearing them both. And, you know, you've seen this one on my channel before, I think. This is a beautiful aromatic fougere. We'll make my aromatic fougere. I'm going to do a fougere list as well. That's on my list of things to do. I have a lot of ideas of videos I want to do, as you can see. This is Bogart Signature from 1975. And if you like fragrances like Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, this is such a great fragrance. Another cheapie. You know, you can get this for under $20 for 100 ml. Yeah, this is 100 ml. I'm sorry, 90 ml. I lied. They skimped on 10 ml, but so what? For 90 ml for $18 or whatever I paid for this fragrance, it's amazing. It has this fantastic leather note. There's this mossiness from the oak moss. And I don't know how the House of Bogart keeps these type of fragrances, you know, not just in production, but in this type of quality. This is a newer bottle, and it feels like you're buying something from the 1970s. I have no clue how they do it. There's a beautiful clove note in here. There's that rosemary, just like you get the rosemary in Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. Oh, fantastic fragrance. I love these old masculine fragrances. My favorite type of fragrances to wear are vintage masculines. And then a fragrance that I'm going to show you from 1975 that is not even on Fragrantica. It is a under the radar, about as under the radar as you can get. It's from a house called Thomas Lawrence, which I've never even heard of. And it's called Bateau Ivre. I probably butchered that. Let's see if you can see the bottle. Man, that reflection's brutal, huh? Bateau Ivre. Okay, so here you go. It opens up like this. And there's the old school atomizer. You know, basically no crimp. Beautiful little bottle looking thing. 25 ml that I got from Anuj Enchanté Perfumes. And there's no notes anywhere, not even on Parfumo. It just says, hey, we know this perfume exists, but there's nothing else about it. It's long, long discontinued. The box looks like you're playing like an asteroid game from the 70s in an arcade. It's the most crazy box you've ever seen. If you go on to Parfumo.net and type in Bateau Ivre, you will see a picture, actually, of the box. And you'll see what I mean. It's pretty hilarious. One of the coolest boxes ever. But it is a well, who's the house? It's Thomas Lawrence is actually a Paris house, I believe. I think the house folded long ago. But the only thing I could get, I wore this once, and this is like a musky take on maybe something that came later, like you know, there's a little bit of castoreum. You feel that old school 80s castoreum makes an appearance here in the 1970s, but with a lot of musk. Glad to have it. Not something I would, you know, if you can find a good deal on it because no one's talking about this and you like old school masculines, grab it. It's a good talking point, but other than that, I mean, I wouldn't go run out and spend big money on this. And then the final fragrance from the 1970s, and this is a hit. This is one that is also a cheapie. Again, I don't know about current formulations because this was before, I think the house of EA bought the house of I think EA bought Geoffrey Beene. EA Fragrances, Elizabeth Arden. This is Gray Flannel. And again, this is a formulation or a bottle before Elizabeth Arden took them over. So this is an older bottle. It's a smaller bottle. It's a 30 ml bottle. But I'd rather have 30 mLs of the proper juice than 100 ml of a juice I don't want to wear, you know what I mean? And if you like fragrances like Fahrenheit, you have to get your nose on this. The violet leaf is just fantastic. It's so masculine. You know, some people say you can't wear this today. Bull. I would wear this all day. There's a beautiful iris note. There's a beautiful iris note that keeps everything a little powdery. It starts green with galbanum and neroli, petitgrain. Then there's that, there's a floral heart in this. But the floral heart is really tampered down by the fact that there's this violet leaf. Not violet flower, but violet leaf, which gives this gasoline type vibe. I love this fragrance. You know, it's amazing that this is the kind of perfumery they used to put out just in, you know, in everyday stores. So Geoffrey Beene, Geoffrey Beene's Gray Flannel. If you've never smelled it, try to get a vintage bottle. You know, the kids laugh at this on their videos. It's pretty funny. They laugh at this, but then they'll go spend $500 on a Killian fragrance. So, you know, if you're into real fragrances, you're not out there trying to flex. Oh, I spent $1,000 on a Roja. If you don't care about that, you just want to smell amazing perfumery, go spend 20 or 30 bucks on a vintage bottle of Geoffrey Beene's Gray Flannel. Fantastic fragrance. I love this fragrance. And then we're going to move on to 1976. We have 3 fragrances in the year of 1976, 2 from the house of Halston, and the first one is their hit, and this is Z-14. Halston Z-14. Now, Fragrantica says 1974. Parfumo says 1976, so we're going off of either way. It's in this video either way. Parfumo says 1976, so that's what it's going to be. And as you can see, this is a vintage bottle when it was Halston Fragrances, Inc. Elizabeth Arden also bought this house, and there were big reformulations. So if you can find a bottle from when it was Halston Fragrances, Inc., that is what you want. And the reason that you want that is a big part of this fragrance is the oak moss in the base and the leather in the base, and that's really toned down. There's a beautiful cypress note in the top of Z-14, and one of the most fantastic cinnamon fragrances. I told you I really love Clive Christian's X for Men because it has that cinnamon note, that ambery cinnamon. This has that cinnamon note to me from Clive Christian X. Now, a lot of people might laugh at that, think I'm completely insane. This is a $10 fragrance. Clive Christian X is a $500 or $600, $700 fragrance, depending on the bottle size. To me, the cinnamon notes are very similar, at least in the vintage under Halston Fragrances, Inc. I've never smelled the new reformulation by EA, but I hear it's terrible. And so this is what the 1970s smelled like. And there's a biography that you can actually watch. I think it might be on one of the big streaming services on Halston, the man. And he was an amazing figure. He lived an amazing life. He was so popular in the 1970s. Studio 56, all that good stuff. You know, check out Halston Z-14 if you've never smelled it. Try to get a vintage bottle. And then another fragrance that was actually released at the same time, Halston did a duo fragrance. So they did a duo release. And this is Halston 1-12. This is a Fougere fragrance. Again, Fragrantica says 1976 on this one, but they say 1974 on Z-14, which I know they were released together, or at least that's what I heard. I wasn't around, but I heard they were released together. So if they were released together, Fragrantica's wrong on one of them. But this is a Fougere. This is a green Fougere that turns very floral. It almost turns, you know, someone said it almost feels like it goes from a masculine to a feminine type fragrance on Fragrantica. And I kind of understand what they mean. There's this old school floral note that starts to kick in heavy from the jasmine, and there's an old school carnation note here as well. But it's very green in the top. There's galbanum, there's basil, bergamot, orange, there's pine tree needles. But then it's that oak moss and labdanum. And again, this is a bottle that was created under Halston Fragrances, Inc. As you can see below the 3.9 fluid ounces. And so this is what you want. Find something like this. Even if you know, I bought one without a cap, or I don't know what this is, but who cares? Get the one that's the proper formulation, and you will enjoy the juice inside much more. It's hard for these old school fragrances like this to turn because they're just oak moss bombs. There's so many heavy ingredients. There's civet. There's stuff that just, you know, it's just a ball of oak moss. And so unless they just left this out in the sun, and then you add the fact that it's got the bottle that helps secure it from light seeping through. You know, these type of bottles where light can't just get through are great because it keeps the fragrance better. These aren't obviously completely opaque, but they're a little bit better than just a clear bottle. So those are the two Halston fragrances from 1976. And then my favorite release from 1976, and one I don't think I've shown on this channel before, this is Caron's Yatagan. Will definitely make my favorite animalic fragrances. This is a vintage. This is even more of a vintage. You can kind of see, so the new version that Caron puts out, which one of my subscribers told me is a very good reformulation, by the way. I haven't smelled the new stuff, but I'll take their word for it. Looks like this, but with white. So instead of this being red, this is completely white. And you can see the design where it says Yatagan. So you can see this is white, but it's a different design. And this is the older bottle. Caron was a house that has gone through many changes. As you can see, this is a tester with no cap. It says demonstration on the back. And it is important, you know, the thing about when I buy fragrances is I always go for the vintage because I want I want more oak moss, I want the better ingredients, I want pre-reformulation, I want closer to the original creation. That's just naturally what I want. And this has a big castoreum note in it. That's what tends to give it that dirty, you know, forest floor feel, along with the oak moss. That castoreum and oak moss mixed together, and castoreum and oak moss together are two of my favorite notes. When they combine, they create something magical. And this is also very green. You know, it feels like, you know, it feels like like you're smelling a forest floor, like you pick up a bunch of, you know, damp leaves on the forest floor and just throw them up in the air, and you get that crazy forest floor smell. And this is what you get out of this. Oh, God, so good. Such a good masculine fragrance. The House of Caron. And not expensive either if you're going to go for the current formulation. The vintage you're going to obviously pay more for, but if you like fragrances like, you know, Antaeus, if you like animalic fragrances, this is one to definitely check out. It is right up there on some of my favorite masculines to wear, and from 1976. And then the final year is 1977. And we're going to go to a Givenchy fragrance, which I actually did not include on my Givenchy list, but I could have. It is Aramis Devon. And as you can see, it's Country Cologne. Eau de Cologne. Country Cologne. This is a vintage bottle, obviously. The new bottles all come in that standard Aramis bottle that they put all of the old masculines in. This came out in 1977. Bernard Chant is the creator, the famous Bernard Chant, who created, you know, Estee Lauder's Azure, the original Aramis, just an icon in the fragrance industry. He's known for using some aldehydes in the top, and you do get this, in the top you get this amazing mixture of galbanum and artemisia, which are two green notes, mixing with this aldehydes. The first time you smell it, you'll probably go, what am I smelling? But as it dries, the pine starts to come out. There's this beautiful leather with oak moss and labdanum in the base. It's a Givenchy. And there's patchouli, and it's probably one of my favorite green masculine fragrances to wear. Stuff like this and stuff like Chanel No. 19, the fact that I already own them, is one of the reasons I never went and bought Synthetic Jungle by Frederic Malle. I have so many green fragrances like this that I just love to wear. I just can't see, you know, the reason to go splurge on a fragrance like that, personally. Now, on to one of my favorite honey fragrances of all time. You know, I love the note of honey. Fragrantica says that there's white honey in this. This is from the year 1977 by the House of Marbert, and it's called Marbert Man. Now, this is a reformulated bottle, as you can see, made in Germany, but the original bottle comes in this, it almost looks like it's this red, you can see the picture on Fragrantica if you look it up. Instead of being black and up and down, the wording is turned normal, like it's writing left to right. Marbert Man is what it says, and the background's in red. Either way, this is a fantastic reformulation, I think. I haven't smelled the original, but from what I smell, I can't imagine it would be much better than this. This is so good. It does have this beautiful carnation with rose that starts to come in, but it mixes with the honey, and it manages to stay so masculine because there's this lavender and artemisia and basil and bergamot in the top, but then the base, there's oak moss, patchouli, cedar, leather. Oh man, it is so good. I love honey notes, and this is so refined, so well done. The honey note in this is it's not as pushy, and it's not as in your face as Givenchy Gentleman, but these two, the one I'm starting with, and then this one here, if you love honey, you have to try to track down a bottle. I think Anouge actually has a couple bottles of this still. Maybe if you ask him nice, he can find one for you. Amazing honey fragrance. If you like the note of honey, if you like fragrances like Boss No. 1, which I love that fragrance, Marbert Man from 1977 has to be on your list. And then, last on this this year in perfume, which has turned into this year's in perfume, is YSL's Opium. 1977, one of the best Orientals of all time. Oh man, it is so good. This is something special. I mean, if you've never smelled this, you have to get your nose on a bottle. This is a Tom Ford era bottle, apparently. I thought this was an older bottle, but one of my subscribers corrected me. It's actually not, even though it has the 5-digit batch code on the bottom. The ones with the built-in sprayer or the splash bottles are the original bottles, but this is still so good. I just can't imagine it could be better. I can't imagine improving on this formula. It's like, it blows your mind. But this has this amazing clove, this amazing incense. There's this myrrh note. There's castoreum, which I love the note of castoreum. Oh, it's so good. If you like spicy oriental fragrances, check this out. There's a Givenchy fragrance by Amouage called Fate Woman, which uses an incense and you know, resinous feel in a very similar way, but it's a Givenchy structure, whereas this is a straight oriental in my opinion. So check out Opium for women, the original EDT. The EDP, the Secret de Parfum, is just as amazing to me. I feel like the myrrh note maybe amped up a little bit, but Opium for Women, 1977, one of the greatest releases of all time. And this concludes the very first This Year in Perfume series. I'm going to do many more, obviously, as they go on. Like I said, 1979 will have its own year. 1980 will have its own year because I have so many bottles in that year. But I wanted to aggregate the first four years because I only had a few in each year. So obviously this video has gone a little long. You guys are used to my long videos. So thank you for supporting me in the first month. And cheers. Everyone have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.